1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go! Beaming to you from the Plastic Microphone Studios deep in the heart of Cajun country, this is Fave Five From Fans. I'm your host, Jamie Ray, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. We've got a show out there for all of you in the podcast universe that you'll just have to adapt to. Jay Hall of the Okie Bookcast is zooming in to discuss our 5 favorite book adaptations. Yosemite is Jay is a lifelong Oklahoma person, a lifelong lover of books, no, he's not. Still, that's a lot of lives. Anyway, a college dean, and now a published author. See, I told you I knew you were a dean.
You crushed it.
Yeah. His book, God Help Me, I'm a Young Man, 10 Essentials for Becoming the Dad Your Kids Need, is available for purchase right now on Amazon.com. And if you have the Kindle premium thing where you I guess pay a little bit extra or something and they give you some stuff, you can read it for free, but you can't get the autographed free Kindle version. I've tried it. It doesn't work out. It's hard to get the ink off my screen. He is a 5-time guester. Yes, that's right. It means
Correct.
You get your smoking jacket. Look for it coming in the mail. He is broadcasting from the OKC, where he empty nests with his wife, a revolving cast of adult children, and he occasionally dog sits. So I'd like to take a minute to say, we feel you, brother. You need a hug? I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know what a long distance Zoom hug looks like, but I'm afraid
we could figure it out. Yep.
But
there you go.
No, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Welcome back to the show, Jay.
If anybody's still listening, hey, it's great to be here.
They're usually sleeping by now.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get my 5-timers jacket straight from
smoking jacket.
Smoking,
that.
well, obviously.
Yes,
obviously.
yeah. And then you can turn it inside out and it's a seersucker too. So, there you go. Just in case.
Oh my gosh.
So, Jay, we have been together. We've done this 5 times now.
Yeah.
We did Fave 5 Aliens, Fave 5 MCU Moments, Fave 5 TV Dads through the 80s, and as many dad jokes as you can stand.
So many dad jokes.
So many dad jokes. And we just wrapped up Fave 5 Book Endings, which is episode 94, which by the time you hear this, which if I've done my math correctly, will be episode 103.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, nice. Thank you.
Well done, you.
I think 4 people have heard an episode. So, I don't know. It's just, it's tough. It's tough in the summer. Nobody wants to podcast,
Got to have the Fave Five From Fans completionist. Like there's got to be some kind of award for people who have endured. I mean, listen to all 100 episodes.
Yeah, I do. Speaking of, I need to give a special shout out to Kathy B, who is a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, and she's an Auburn fan. I don't know if that means anything to you with your OKC people and whatnot, but she recently found the show. Strange enough, she's been tweeting to me or Xing to me or whatever you call it now, that she likes the show and has listened to episodes. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, Kathy, thank you for being number 16. The numbers just keep climbing.
That double digits was a big day.
What? Who, Lord?
Oh my God.
But we do it because we love it, not because I can't think of any reason to do it. No, we just love it.
I'm here for the smoking jacket.
It's on the way. Be looking for it.
Keep saying that.
So this is kind of like a bookend episode.
Clever.
Because we did our book endings, which was a lot of fun. And now we're doing book adaptations.
Yeah.
So what we kind of decided to do is that any type of book turned into any type of media. So it could be a comic book turned into a movie. It could be a book turned into a cartoon. It can be a paperback turned into a funny little hat for your dog to wear. Any of those things would work on this show. And I got to say, I'm kind of up in the head. Was this one your idea? Or book endings was mine? It gets fuzzy.
It has to be that way because I would never have done. That was the most stressful thing I've ever done was talk about book endings.
Yeah.
So that had to have been.
Sorry. Because I was muted.
Oh no, we know. I would never have come up with that on my. It was fun. It was a great conversation, but yeah,
it really bothered you to.
It did
to spoil or to try hard not to spoil when you're talking about the end of a book.
It feels kind of impossible, right?
But we did it. So anyway, and if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to the other one, you can go back and you can listen to both of them. So there you go. You're welcome.
So now we that episode by saying that episode contains spoilers.
Yes, it does. Oh, you are so on it.
It's Inception.
Meta. You're meta.
Indeed,
that's why you're the dean.
But not the Zuckerberg thing, just meta.
The X.
What is happening?
I don't know, but I love it. So I tasked you to come up with a list of 5 of your favorite book adaptations. And as always, you were giving some honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Did you take advantage of those honorable mentions?
You know I did.
All right. And how many of those honorable mentions did you have?
2-ish. I almost stayed within the rules this time.
So you're not a dean of math, is what we're hearing.
I'm not actually at all.
Well, listen, we have chit-chatted and gone on and on and on about this. Oh, actually, I think we're 4 minutes in. Never mind. God, it feels. Why don't we? Let's get crazy. Let's go to the honorable mentions.
Crazy talk.
Crazy, right?
All right. So
I'm not going to write this down either, by the way.
What are you not?
I'm not going to write down what your list is.
Oh, okay.
So just saying, my crayon's broke.
I would loan you a crayon through the screen, but again, we can't figure the hug thing out either. All right. So my first honorable mention is a comic graphic novel that was adapted to a television series, but not really. So the first one is HBO's
The Bible?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Gosh. Sorry, Mom. HBO's Watchmen. So incredible, fantastic television series created from an equally incredible and fantastic graphic novel, but the television series chose not to recreate the graphic novel, but rather to use the world it created to tell a wholly different story, which is kind of a fascinating, clever way to do it because, Watchmen had been adapted as a film. It didn't do great, and it wasn't really a great adaptation. But to take the world that's been created, to kind of have some of those characters move in and out of it, but to tell a very different story, it's clever. It's incredibly well done. And part of the reason it made my list is because most of it was shot in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's set in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So just up the road from where I am now. And one of the really interesting things to me, at least, and to lots of folks, the beginning of the series shows the Greenwood massacre and burning that went on in the Black Wall Street area in Tulsa in the 1920s. And for a whole lot of people, this was the very first time you knew that event happened.
Really?
Yeah. So it's done in a way, it's harrowing the way that they shot it and put it together, and feels very real for those of us who know the history and kind of know what's going on. But I don't know how many people I've talked to, including people who grew up in Oklahoma, that was the first time they knew that happened. In fact,
really,
they talk about they would talk about this incredible scene at the beginning of Watchmen, and then you say, well, you know, that's real, like that took place, and just blew people's minds. So it is far enough removed from the graphic novel that you don't have to know the graphic novel to appreciate it. But if you do know the story of the comic, of Alan Moore's comic, it's fantastic, incredibly well done. For whatever reason, they only did one season. Mm-hmm. But man, that one season is worth it. It's incredible.
So I never watched it, but off the top of my head, isn't Ozymandias in it too?
He shows up kind of.
Of. Okay.
He's there, but not in the same way that he was in the comic.
But this takes place like in the 60s? No, in the 80s.
I think it takes place a little bit in the future.
Oh, really? See, I know nothing about this thing.
The graphic novel takes place in the 80s.
Comic series. Sorry.
Anyway.
I've been holding that in, man. I've just been holding that in.
Out of your system now. But the show, I think, is actually a little bit into the future.
I think you're right. 34 years after the comic series. So I think that would be 2019's Tulsa, if my math is correct. I don't know.
Are best friends.
I am not on Wik. Oh, I am. Never mind. So I guess, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, even though I seem to do it every episode, I've been told.
Happens a lot, yeah.
How is this an adaptation of a book? Is it just because they take the world that they created and do another one? Because honestly, it sucks. I mean, this is like a horrible. Sorry. God, first time listeners are just going to be like, this guy is a jerk. They're not wrong, but this guy is a jerk. Well, what is it about it that makes you like it more than you say liked the movie?
Yeah, I think some of it may be, and this, if you're a book nerd like I absolutely am, you always struggle with adaptations because you have a picture in your head of what it ought to be. Mm-hmm. I think some of why I appreciate the series more than the film is that I know what I feel like the film needs to look and be like. And in this case, because of the comic series, you have a visual representation of it. So it's not even just I've created it in my head, but you actually get to see it. And so I think some of my struggle with the film was that it just didn't capture that same heat that Watchmen had. And I couldn't really put my finger on why. Mm-hmm. But the television series, and you're right, it's not obviously an adaptation of anything that was created by the original creators.
Yes, you hear that, everyone? I was right. Hold on, let me put this on my calendar.
You said you weren't writing anything down, remember?
Right.
But
we'll use blood.
Taking one of the things that you can do, and I think this is really an interesting move, is to take that world, mm-hmm. bring those characters in and out of it. You mentioned Ozymandias, some of the others, but telling a wholly different story that is a logical progression of where things went from there. So it's almost like the comic series didn't really get a sequel. I mean, there's some other things that kind of happened around it, but if it had, this might be what it looks like.
Oh, cool. Well, I read some of the After Watchmen comics, but I don't believe that they go into this world.
No,
I think it really just kind of wrapping up, and I think even though it's After Watchmen, they tell some stories from before.
Oh, right,
they
because
got together too.
Timelines in the story, the timelines in the comics are kind of all over the place.
Yeah, and that was Regina King and I seriously knew that without looking it up because. Yeah, was she a police officer that turns superhero? Okay, all right, awesome. Yeah. Well, I will have to watch that one day. I don't have it.
I recommend it. It's good.
Okay, well, on your recommendation, then I'll do it.
Yeah. Now you can blame me if you don't love it, but you will.
Oh, I will blame you either way. And on your recommendation, I recommend you tell me what your other 16, or I'm sorry, other honorable mention is.
So this is this will blow you. This is a category, but there's only two. Yeah, right. Are you tired yet? But there's only two in it, and I promise I'm going to be fast because these are two adaptations that have just started.
Okay.
So Sandman, so another comic series that Netflix has done, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, and the other is a novel called Silo by Hugh Howey.
On Apple TV, right?
TV.
I really want to see that.
I love both of these source materials. I mean, Sandman is maybe the best comic anything I've ever read. Silo is a fantastic series. It's a set of 3 novels, actually. And so I was really excited for both adaptations. They both happened to hit at about the same time. They're only one season in, but man, have they crushed it.
Really?
So Sandman is, again, it's the problem of adapting comics to the screen. But Gaiman is one of the executive producers. He's, creative consultant. And I'm telling you, the imagery that they use in this first season of Sandman is perfect. And there's, some noise about, well, the characters aren't, the same color or the same gender or whatever that they are in the comics, whatever. That didn't matter.
Right.
But the characterizations, the things that go on, it is deeply emotional. It is brilliantly done. It is every bit as dark as the comics, but at the same time has that kind of thread of hopefulness that goes all the way through Sandman. I sat down and crushed through that thing in no time at all. And Silo's the same way. It's a little bit less true to the book because of some timeline problems that the book jumps around a lot, and that's harder to do in a television series without making people crazy. But what's really cool about what they did with Silo, so Silo, just very quickly, is post-apocalyptic, 10,000 people living in a silo that's 150 stories tall underground.
Okay.
And so you have this incredible world and culture that Howie has created, and they have absolutely replicated it. I mean, perfection's a big word, but they have replicated it to every expectation that I would have in the set design, in the complications of moving up and down the staircase. They don't have an elevator, so if you were to go to the bottom, it takes a minute. And there's implications of that. And in the novel, you get those implications that, if you're going to go down to the bottom and come back up, it takes a couple of days. And all of that is also played out in the show. So they're just getting started. And that's why they're honorable mentions instead of in the 5. But absolutely worth starting the ride with. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
So again, almighty Google says that there are 11 episodes of Sandman and they're all released already.
Yes, they're all out.
Okay. And Silo is in its first season, right?
Well, they're both in their first season, because the 11 episodes of Sandman get through about the second comic, if I remember right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot more to come.
All right. And then Silo is 3 books. So I guess after they do that, if it's really going well, they can expand on it.
Yeah. Then you do the unfortunate Game of Thrones thing and start making up the end. And
oh, the purple wedding. Oh my God. I was just watching scenes. I'm working on a list of the favorite moments of Game of Thrones right now. That's tough.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Wow. Well, those are 2 good choices.
Well,
it's one good choice and one kind of, but I'm not going to tell you which, so that you'll stay up at night with the pillows and you got the curtain. You get the curtain.
You
got the covers up around your chin. What did he mean? What did he mean? Mm-hmm.
All right, you got.
All right. Mine are very honorable. Very honorable.
I'll be the judge of that.
I'm going to switch the order that I had them in, just because I think you deserve it. Because they in no particular order. My first honorable mention is the Watchmen movie, based on the Watchmen comic book series that was turned into a graphic novel that someone made a TV series that had nothing to do with the original source material except for the
that's
world.
why you're salty about it. Okay.
That's exactly why I'm salty. Okay. So starting over, I actually loved the movie.
Okay.
I thought it was a good adaptation because the comic book can only live in your mind. There are so many things that happen in that not the ending itself notwithstanding. Okay, when I read that way before they were even thought about, or they were even thinking about making it into a movie, when I read that, I was like, there is no way you could do this and have it look, it doesn't make sense in a 3-dimensional world. Plus you add to that the Tales of the Black Freighter and the little kid and how things are mirroring what's going on. It would have looked weird. So are there things in there that don't match up? 100%. Okay. It's Owlman. So fit that it makes you sick. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. But there are so many things that stood out for me. Least of which was Jackie Earle Haley's performance as Rorschach. Okay. I thought he improved on what was in the comic book by bringing it to life in a way that, okay, I could see this guy happening. I really could. Silk Spectre, Lord Jupiter is, an amazing lady. And what's her name? Malin Ackerman is a beautiful woman. It just didn't feel right. But if you bumped up Owlman like they did, and then you get this Silk Spectre too, like you did, okay, they kind of go together. So therefore, it's a good adaptation of it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Now, was it by the source material? Was it, did it lay out? Did it have the same thing? No. Okay, that's fine. And we're setting this down now early, like you did just a minute ago. This is how we enjoyed the adaptation, how it's a favorite, not how closely did it go to the book.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure everybody understands that, because there's going to be things on here that you're going to go like, oh yeah, but the ending was totally different. Or like you just said, oh, but it's a girl in the book and now it's a guy.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Did we like the way that they took that material and put it on the screen, or vice versa, or whatever for us?
Yeah.
And the Watchmen movie is one of mine, especially if you're really, like pop like one of those big bags of popcorn and get like a 2-liter Coke, and you watch the uncut version with Zack Snyder standing there talking to you about it.
Oh yeah.
It's nuts, and then you follow it up with the DVD that my buddy Cody Chamberlain worked on for the Tales of the Black Freighter. You just get all of this immersive stuff. But could it have worked if you took the exact material and put it on screen? No. So
I agree with that.
That's why I think it's a good adaptation. That's why it's one of my favorites. My other favorite, I like just because I loved it from the day that I got it on cassette.
Oh, wow.
Okay. With never a thought that it could be turned into a movie or a series. And I'm talking about Stephen King's The Mist in 3D sound.
Yeah.
Now, there's a little fuzziness on the internet as to, did it come out first as just an immersive 3D sound cassette, or did it come out in a book and then they put it on? My dollar goes to, I think he put this out just as a sound piece first, and then it did get adapted, and then it moved on. So I think the adaptation of the movie was fantastic.
Yeah.
I loved it. They took a story that was closed end. Okay. It like goes off into, and you have no idea. I shouldn't say closed end. It was open end. You have no idea what's causing all of this, what's going to happen to them, all of these things. And they turned it into this huge, expansive, full of all of these characters, bringing to life, people like Jim Grondin, the William Sadler character, of course Andre Braugher as the neighbor, and Marcia Gay Harden as Mrs. Carmody, just nutso to the nutso. But of all of those people, David Drayton, to me, was I won't use the T word, was the best adaptation of the character because, and I'm going to tell you, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, don't blame me. I hated the ending of the movie.
Okay.
Hated it with a passion. Walked out of that movie just spitting visceral and vile, and it took me literally a couple of years to realize how incredible that ending was.
Huh.
And the fact that it doesn't change the story of the original, and the movie just added these layers to it. And I think I was mad about was the fact that they ended it without it being a quote unquote happy ending. And then it just got kind of turned into a, kaiju fighting type, thing. But then when it sat on me and it kind of percolated literally for a couple of years, I realized, wow, that was actually really incredible.
So
now I love it.
Did you watch it again? That made
Not for years.
It, or you just, as you were thinking about it,
not for years. I think it had been in my head. And so when I finally said, I do need to give this another, and I rewatched it in the black and white version, which I thought I would love. And I didn't love it as much, even though the movie doesn't have a lot of bright colors, except in the beginning when the sun comes out and all of that. But watching it there and seeing it at the end, and that whole, the mountains of the madness type, Lovecraftian creatures and all of that, really made me go, wow. And then not too long, like maybe not even a month later, I turned around and rewatched it again. And then I had settled it. Yep. No, this is a good adaptation. This is taking something that I love and putting it, and they made it their own. And I've got to remember that it doesn't change my experience from because I used to sit in bed with that, in a Walkman with headphones on and just listen to it because it was so awesome the way they did the sound. And this was just a whole different experience. So anyway, that's
interesting. My daughter and I just had this conversation because we separately watched Knock at the Cabin, which is in Shyamalan's adaptation of Paul Tremblay's Cabin at the End of the World, which is a novel we both loved.
Oh, okay.
And she saw the movie in the theater and left angry, like you did, because of what he did to the ending. And so when she heard that I was going to watch it, we were kind of talking about it. It's like, I try to remember that these are two separate experiences, right? That the book is a thing and the movie is a thing, or the TV show or whatever is separate. And if I can do that now, sometimes they do things that I'm like, nope, that just doesn't make any sense in the world that's been created. But most of the time I can separate those two things out and say, okay, I can appreciate the film for what it is, even though it's not what I would have chosen, or it's not what I remember from the book. And the book is its own thing. And I can enjoy both differently.
Right.
If that's the decision that the director and the screenwriter make as they're adapting these things.
Yeah.
Now, there are some that make me angry, but
right.
Keep that in mind.
And I think, and I don't want to ageism to anybody, younger, but I think that is definitely something that comes to you with older age.
Oh, sure.
Because it doesn't change how we feel about it, because that's not the movie or the series or the song that we loved so much. Who cares if, Miley Cyrus goes and redoes a song and we think it's horrible? Well, then I just won't listen to that song. When it comes on, I'll go listen to the original song that I loved so much. And I think that kind of helped me a lot when I sat down and realized it's actually a cool ending. If it had been any other movie and I wasn't comparing it, I would have been like, holy crap, HP's in the house.
Right.
But, so anyway, that's going to be my honorable mentions. That's French, by the way.
So international.
So international. I've never been to Italy and had, I don't know, wine on the Champs-Elysees like you have.
It's not in Italy.
Well, whatever. Okay, we got that out of the way. I think we can. I think we're positive. I am positive that we're ready to hear your number 5.
Okay, so
wait a minute though. There's one other thing.
So I will see your Stephen King and bring you one of my own. How about that?
Do it.
My number 5 is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which became the Shawshank Redemption, the film by Stephen King.
Yes.
I love this story. This is one of the few times where I say, you know what? I think the film wins.
Ooh,
yeah.
Strong words.
No, I've actually got a couple of these in this.
Oh, bring it.
Coming from me, that's a lot.
I guess if I can't hug you, I can't punch you. So
that's fair.
You feel free.
Yeah, pass crayon. There's so many things. So Shawshank Redemption is the story of a man named Andy Dufresne who is wrongly accused and convicted of murdering his wife and her lover and ends up in prison, Shawshank prison. Meets a man named Red, who in the film is played by Morgan Freeman. Andy Dufresne is played by Tim Robbins. And
really, sure that wasn't Chris Rock
that played Andy Dufresne? Yeah, I'm absolutely sure.
No, who played Red? I could swear. Never mind. That's
not good. Some alternate reality that you found yourself falling into. And Red has been there. He's a lifer. He's been there longer than Andy, and kind of takes him under his wing and shows him the ropes. And the film and the story are this really stark picture of prison life. It's unflinching in a lot of ways, but because Andy has a background in finance, he becomes useful to the warden, who has under the books, off the books operation going on with some money coming in and out and using prison labor and things like this. And Andy becomes the accountant for this operation. Well, one of the privileges this gets him is the ability to hang a poster on his wall of, in the case of the story, Rita Hayworth. In the film, it changes over time. And he uses that poster to cover up the tunnel he's digging to escape from the prison. And so over time, he finally manages to escape. And in the film, the sequence that Darabont creates of Andy's escape juxtaposed with the warden figuring out that he's gone and also figuring out that he is exposed, that all the books and all the other things that he's done have been released. And you have this just fantastic shots of Dufresne escaping and getting out. And, the iconic when he comes out into the, bar ditch basically and throws his arms up to the sky, juxtaposed with the warden shooting himself in his office because the cops are there and he knows it's about to go down. So this picture of a man who's been in prison now becoming free and a guy who thought he was always in charge getting his is just fantastic.
Yeah.
It's an incredible adaptation. It's incredible. I'm gushing. It's an incredible film. It's a little bit different at the end because, at the end of the book, we don't know that they ever reconnect in Mexico and things like that. At the end of the film, you see Red walking up to Andy next to his boat in Mexico, and they, I assume, sail up into the sunset together. I know. So sweet after all the things that you've seen and endured in this movie. But just if you've seen Shawshank Redemption, it is like every list, it's in the top 10 films of the 20th century and should be, but have never read the short story. I would really encourage you to go find that short story and read it. Because I think you'll appreciate the film even more.
I can't agree enough that it is a wonderful, wonderful movie and adaptation. And I mean, it's got some wonderful posters in the, that's can't say enough. Amazing performances. Like Bob Gunton is probably now everybody loves, what was that guy's name? Morgan Freeland, what? Yeah. Freeman, something like that. Yeah. That guy, he was pretty good in that movie. He probably could do something if he really tried. But Bob Gunton was amazing in that film. Yeah, it's just you wanted to hate him so much. But one thing I did want to say, because I really, really don't remember. So you said he was unjustly sent to prison. So he didn't kill them? Who did?
I don't think we ever know.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think gosh, now we're getting ready to get exposed. If I remember right, you know that he didn't do it, but it's never made clear who did.
Do you think it was his little sister?
What are you talking about?
You know, from the night the lights went out in Georgia, because sister don't miss what she aims. Okay. Anyway, never mind.
What's happening?
So that book, what was that called? 4 Seasons?
I think it's in 4 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that. It's oh God. 3 of the 4 stories have become movies. And the last one, which was The Breathing Method, I think they're making that into a movie.
Really?
But yeah. So it wasn't Night Shift. Maybe Apt Pupil. If only there was a way for us to figure these out.
We had all the information in the world right in the palm of our hands.
Right. But you look really nice in that light, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely not your phone that you're looking into.
My phone that I'm looking at right now.
No, that's not it. It's just the natural glow.
Are the 4 that are in different seasons: Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil, which yes, became a film, The Body, which became Stand By Me.
Stand By Me, right?
And then the last one's The Breathing Method.
Yeah, I think they're trying to turn that into a movie. Which, you remember that story?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was creepy. Oh, all right. Well, I guess then if you and your high mighty Stephen King number 5, I guess my number 5 should be a Stephen King too.
No way.
And it is. Mine is based on the amazing novel, first published in 1978, called The Stand.
Yes, sir.
And as much as I love that version, in 1990, it was reprinted as the complete and uncut edition, where he restored over 400 pages to it. That sucker weighs like 25 pounds. You have to have a permit to have that book because it's so. But if you've ever seen, and I'm not talking about the HBO show. I will tell you, even in this new world where I have all of these great fangled ideas so that I can love what I wanted to love and don't have to compare it. I heard so many bad things about it. Yeah, that I just couldn't do it. But for me, literally from the moment it comes on and you've got that Don't Fear the Reaper, and you're seeing it through the eyes of a surveillance camera, and there's all of these dead people and everything from that moment until the very end. I absolutely love it. Even the finger of God. Okay. As bad as it looked, that's a perfect example of when I read it. I thought I don't know how they would ever do this on the screen. And I was right because it looks hokey, you know? Yeah. But with that aside, there were so many amazing performances in this movie. Yeah. You know, the least of which for me was Matt Frewer, you know, as the Rat Man. Was it Rat Man or something like that? Yeah. Man, Trash Can Man. That's what it was. Trash Can Man. That whole, when he's out in the desert and his face is just getting burned, and it's all for you.
Right. Yeah.
Man. And, you know, you talk about things that get into you, like that become part of your lexicon. MOON, that spells moon. Yep. I do that probably once a week. It's just, I don't know. It's just so into me. And the whole thing is great. I actually have it on DVD, and I will probably pull it out and watch it maybe at least once a year, because you could just put it on and at any point you look up, you know where you are.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that movie except The Hand of God, that I don't like. So there you go. That's going to be my number 5, pairing your Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, I will be making The Stand.
Well done. I think The Stand is a great, and this happens with so much King stuff, where everybody wants to try.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the same thing happened with The Shining, right? There is one version of The Shining, and people can believe whatever they need to believe, but Kubrick's version of The Shining is The Shining, and all these other things we tried to do. Okay, fine, great, congratulations, you made it, but it just, there's something about those originals, those attempts that didn't feed off of anything else, and I think this happened some with The Shining, weren't trying so hard to not be the thing that already existed, that it lost some of what makes it great. So yeah, The Stand, I mean, you watch it and it's dated because it was done at a particular time and place, but it still works, right? It's still it just works. So it's a good one.
Thank you. So I will have to, I'm going to ask you this, and even though, say for example, that there was another version of The Shining, starring maybe someone who had been on that TV show Wings. Wouldn't you think that the ending of that one would have looked so much better in the Kubrick film, where it was so much closer to the ending with the boiler going and all the other stuff? Right. I did, but again, not dissing it. I don't want all the Kubrick fans to overrun the show. Okay. Just the fact that he just freezes, just sitting out there. I mean, it kind of at the end was just, but the boiler going, the way that it's a more explosive ending.
Clever. I do think though that image of Jack Nicholson is so iconic.
It is.
You can almost. I know exactly what you're saying, but there's just something about him, freezing and just being there, and that kind of last shot that you're like, okay, I can forgive all the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, come on, there's a bear in it. What else can you ask for?
Stephen King didn't forgive him apparently, but
that's true.
The rest of us can forgive Kubrick for it.
Is there only those two versions, or is there a third that I don't?
I think there's a third. There's those two. I know that. Yeah, the Steven Weber version. I think there's another one.
I think, what was it? Rebecca De Mornay, I think was the wife. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. Well, we won't talk about it because it doesn't exist. Instead, let's talk about your number 4 favorite adaptation of a book or TV series or comic book or paint by numbers book or a coloring book.
That would have been incredible.
Or a panel book.
Paint by numbers. My number 4 is going back a little ways. A novel that was written in 1972.
Ooh.
Yeah. That was adapted to a cartoon for the screen in 1978 that traumatized an entire generation of children whose parents thought they were taking them to a movie about bunnies.
No way. Watership Down?
Watership Down.
Ooh, dude, that's a good pick.
Dude. Watership Down, for those of you who may not have quite had the chance, and you should, written in 1972 by a man named Richard Adams, who, this was a series of bedtime stories or stories he told his daughters as they were like walking. And Daddy, tell us a story. And he invented this whole world of rabbits who
were not wascally.
Were not wascally. Well, some of them were. But he invented this entire culture. He invented language. There are good guys and bad guys. There's a whole religion that he invents and creates in this book. But the bottom line is a set of rabbits in this warren. One of them has a vision that they're all going to die because developers are going to come and take the land away. When they take the land away, they're just going to get rid of the rabbits because they don't want them around. And so some of the people in the warren believe it. Some of the rabbits in the warren believe it and leave with him, and some stay behind. And I'm telling you, one of the most harrowing things that childhood me ever saw.
Harrowing. I see what you did there.
Is the scene, thank you, is the scene where the developers come in and gas and block off the exits to the rabbit warren and gas them.
Oh.
And it's just bunnies everywhere. And
no bunny gets out.
No bunny gets out. They spare like nothing in this because it wasn't meant for kids.
Yeah.
Not meant for kids. But I know, and I was going back and reading a little bit about it. Like, parents were furious. Saturday afternoon, we're going to take our kids to the bunny movie, and very quickly bunnies start dying, and not just dying, but like dying. They don't spare the blood. They don't spare the violence. They have to deal with predators. They have to deal with, and the book and the film, I mean, they get into things like totalitarianism, right? And there's a Warren that is ruled by General Woundwort, who is just this gigantic evil rabbit that has a reign of terror, and you don't go against him because he will kill you.
Wow.
There are rabbits who choose a life of basically slavery, and there's a whole conversation that goes on about that because they're being fed by this farmer, and why would they ever leave, right?
Wow.
But you have in it these rabbits who are heroic. You have, the hero that kind of rises up, who's not seen as the big strong one. Everybody kind of has a role, and it's an incredible conversation about society. It's an incredible culture that's built. It's beautifully done. It's very simple. That 70s animation, kind of the Lord of the Rings, the BBC did the same way. Very simple, but it is gorgeous. The way they use color, the way they use movement, just all the choices that get made. It is a fantastic adaptation, fairly true to the book. The book's much longer, obviously, than the film, but the events and things like that go on are very true to what happens in the book. And just, again, both of them are fantastic. And I'll say this about all of them: see the film, read the book. Just know that if you're going to see the film and your young one walks in the room because there are bunnies on the screen, go ahead and move them on, because they are going to be very traumatized fairly quickly.
Wow. And I just have to throw out that LaFonda's has some amazing rabbit enchiladas. If you ever make it down to Lafayette, I will take you. They are scrumptious.
I don't know where to go with that one.
Well, that's a great pick. Not even on my radar. I will tell you, I probably saw it once. Really? And I do remember it being vicious. I mean, oof. But
so it was on HBO at a time when I was probably 11 or 12. And they would run it during the day. And so we'd come home from school, and I don't know how many times we watched Watership Down, but it was probably too many. But yeah, just, and at 12, I wasn't catching on that, they're commenting on totalitarian and all that. But still, there was just something about it that was captivating, probably because it was violent and I was 12.
Yeah. And there were bunnies.
There were bunnies. Yeah. Like bunnies.
Wow. Well, I have an equally violent favorite for my number 4. It's amazing how we're pairing up like this. It really is. Mine is based off of a comic book, not a graphic novel, but it was later turned in, because that's what they do, is they take comic books and they put them together, and it actually becomes a trade paperback. But anyway, you don't need to know all of this. All you need to know is that in 1989, James O'Barr puts out a story about Eric. Well, I guess they do call him Eric Draven, whose fiance dies at the hands of a drunk driver, and he makes a pact basically with the spirit of vengeance, I guess is a good way for regular people to understand it. And he comes back and he basically can't die. Amazing series. I've met James O'Barr a couple times and I've talked to him. The movie adaptation was incredible. And if you know anything about comics, then you know the story. Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee, was chosen to be the main character. He was amazing in the film. Sadly, he was killed on set with a quote unquote blank that was shot into his stomach, I believe. And he died from internal wounds and bleeding before. It's the world, the first movie. Now that afterwards they go kind of awry pretty quickly, but that first one, you can't, if you know anything about it, you can't not watch that movie and just think, wow, what am I seeing here? again, a lot of times music makes or breaks a film. The soundtrack on this one was just amazing. It Can't Rain All the Time is, probably on a heavy rotation for me. But I remember, and I guess this is part of it, but I remember meeting James not too long after Brandon's death, and I had this amazing picture of him with his arms out, with Brandon's arms out, and he's got the guitar slung. And I just remember wanting him to sign that and sign the trade paperback version. And he just sat there, and you could just see he was still consumed, with grief, because they had become friends.
Right. Sure.
Because, on the set and talking about the movie, because he wanted to be very faithful to the spirit of it. And, oh man, I mean, that's always stuck with me. And it's great, but I don't watch it on heavy rotation. I think it's a little heavy, because there's too much reality in knowing that, he dies, and that there's some scenes, it's not even him, right. But I thought that first Crow movie was wonderfully adapted, and that's got to be my number 4.
Love it. That is it. And again, that's another one of those movies that everybody has an opinion one way or the other. Like, if you've seen it, you either love it or you don't at all. Nobody's like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever met anyone who was like, oh no, that movie sucks. But you have?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I don't even know if it's like that was a bad movie. It was just that they didn't like it, maybe because it's dark, because of the way
violence. Oof.
Yeah. So I don't know, never had an in-depth enough conversation to know if they just thought it was a bad movie or if they just were like, I don't like that movie, which I think is two different things, right?
It is.
You can appreciate something for what it is and then go, yeah, but it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. High School Musical, perfect example, horrible movie. And, oh wait, no, that's not the same thing. Anyway,
say it.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my God, I love it so much. All right, so we have now come to your number 3 choice, and if we match authors again, I'm going to do a little jig.
I think there's very little chance we're going to match authors here.
Okay,
but High School Musical is a great segue into my number 3. Which is the Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adlard and the rest of that crew.
Oh my God.
And this is a controversial. I know this is getting ready to get very, very controversial.
Not in my heart.
Okay. All right. Good. Because I was okay with you on the Watchmen thing, but if you fought me on this, we might find a way to get through the screen. First of all, and I've said this here, I'm on record many times, I'm a sucker for the end of the world. And if the end of the world involves zombies, I'm there. I'm in it. I love all things zombie. And so I had been reading The Walking Dead as a comic before the AMC show came out. And I cannot tell you how geeked I was to find out they were adapting The Walking Dead into a TV show. And while I am willing to admit there are things about the show that aren't great, it does lag sometimes, and there's some interesting choices that get made. I loved it from the very beginning to the very end, and I was with it from the very beginning to the very end. I wrote out, season 2 on the farm. Like I was in the whole way because I knew where they were going. So I think that helped because I had some idea of what happens in the comics. And even there's lots of differences, and I'll get into that in a second. I also knew some of what was going to show up. So in season 2, when things aren't great, I knew Negan was coming. Yeah. At some point down the road, the governor and Negan and the Whisperers, that stuff's going to show up. And I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how they did it. I knew the characters that were going to show up, and how
got to eat your vegetables to get your ice cream.
That's it. I mean, you got to just kind of endure. And then we get Abraham and Eugene and Princess. I mean, all these people that show up in the middle and late in the show. I think The Walking Dead demonstrates the difficulty of adapting such a massive set of source material. There's 193 issues of the comic.
Right.
So you can't get everything in. And there are some things in the comic that you want to keep, but then there's a lot that just you can't, right? Because you can't do everything, but you also then had to make decisions. And I think when you look at some of the things they did, Daryl Dixon, for those of you that know the show, Daryl Dixon is not a thing in the comics anywhere.
Not at all.
And he's, made it to the end and got his own show coming, right? I mean, he became kind of the centerpiece of what went on, especially after they made the decision to quote unquote kill off Rick Grimes, which they didn't really. But they had, there was a plan and thing that went on there too. So you have these decisions that are very different, right? In the comics, Carl doesn't die. Carl dies in the show. But you also have some things they did that were shot for shot from panels from the comic, and they are incredible.
The first episode is like a moving comic.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the way through, you have these moments when Negan kills Glenn. I mean, it is they took great pains, no pun intended, to make that look like it looked on the page.
Yes, they did.
The Whisperers, when Alpha takes out a bunch of people and puts them on spikes on the hill, that is shot for shot. Now the heads it's a different set of people, but it's shot for shot, beat for beat from the page. So I think, again, it's not perfect. There's struggles with it. It ended differently because it had to, because they're trying to do this expanded universe thing and move people off in different directions. But I think it's a masterclass in what to do, and it also has some moments of what not to do. But for somebody who just loves zombie stuff and who really, really love the comic, and I know there's some people who love the comics that didn't like the show, but man, I am in on both. I think, again, this goes back to the conversation of you have to appreciate them for what they are and recognize they are separate things created out of the same kind of source material. And man, I was in all the way.
Okay. I'm going to take a breath before I talk to you. I cannot agree with you more. I think that these are two things that have to be taken on their individual merits.
Yeah.
The comic is an amazing comic, especially in black and white.
Yes.
What Kirkman did with Word and Charlie Adler did with his pen were fantastic. Okay. And so when here comes the TV series and we start seeing it from the very first episode, all of these things that are just, I mean, literally, they just took the comic and cut it up and made it into a storyboard for that first episode. That's what it felt like. And then we go on along and we meet Merle and we're like, oh, dude, he loses the hand. Oh, dude, he's going to be the governor. Nope. And they bring in this new character and you're like, well, who the hell is this guy? He wasn't even, and just takes off. Shout out to my friend Leah Perrin. She loves Daryl. He was doing that show where he was riding around on his motorcycle, eating at different places. He came to Lafayette. She stalked. She found where he was and went to see and got a hug from him. She loves him. But anyway, so you can read the comic book like you were saying, and okay, I got to get through this part because this got to be coming. And even though people were killed in different ways, and some people weren't killed, and some people were that weren't, and like you say, and all these different things, you can't sit there and compare the two. But it is a wonderful adaptation of that original source material. And instead of just taking that and putting it to the screen, except for the first episode, it's okay. Here's the world that we're in, and we give you 193 issues over here to enjoy. And then you could see some of those same people over here. It's like one of those choose your own adventure books. They made a different choice and things turned out differently. And I think a lot of it turned out really wonderful. And we cannot not talk about the fact that while Kirkman was writing this, he was also writing Invincible.
Right.
Yeah. Which is in a completely different world, completely different story. And it's just as freaking amazing as The Walking Dead is.
Yep.
And that adaptation didn't even make it to my list because while I think it's wonderful, it's so fresh and new, and I just need a lot more of it to know how wonderful it's going to be. But I don't even want to talk to. But it blows my mind to think that every month or hereabouts every month, two issues were coming out from that same wonderful pencil or typewriter or whatever he used, stenograph, whatever. And these two amazing stories were coming out one after the other.
Yeah.
It's, it blows my mind, but I cannot, I can disagree with you just because I can be ornery at sometimes, but I won't, because I wouldn't mean it. And that's a wonderful pick. I was on my short list. It was probably, if I had a list of 10, it would be on that list.
The show would be 4 hours long.
It'd be 4 hours long. Yes.
Well, speaking of, what's your number 3, Jamie?
Well, my number 3 is Robert Kirkman's The Invincible. No, it's not. Mine is actually based off of a short story or a novella, depending upon what your count is, from the amazing Clive Barker. The original story released in, how long ago was that? That was like 86 as part of the novella. Now, this is some origin here. The 3rd volume of the Night Visions anthology set, he released The Hellbound Heart. Of course, that book is worth some bank right now.
Right.
But we get the story of a hedonist criminal who finds a box, and when he solves the puzzle of the box, we get these creatures called Cenobites who have no real difference between pain and pleasure. And he is going to be taken over by them, but he manages to escape. And it's an amazing, immersive, just fantastic world where even, quote unquote, the innocent will have to suffer the judgment and the pains and not. So you take that story, which, by the way, had a female Pinhead in it, not a male, which the Hulu, I just watched the Hulu movie. They turned it back around to the original. And then they turn it into this low budget. It is literally a study in what to do with a little bit of money. So many practical effects. You've got Andrew Robinson, who he's such a naive, innocent dad. No ideas what a horrible, horrible wife and brother he has. And then these Cenobites show up, and they're not even called, like, he's not even called Pinhead at the time. I think he's called like the head Cenobite or something like that. It was nuts. But to take that and then expand on it, and now there's 36 sequels, I think 37. I don't know exactly how many. It was a lot. But I just remember, and it's really what started me on the world of Clive Barker. Because after that, I started getting all of his, Hellbound Heart books. Books of Blood came out after that, and then Magica, and so many other novels. But that very first one, I remember when I saw the movie, I was blown away, because there's that scene where all the hooks go into him and, pull him apart. And I remember seeing that at that part where he goes, Jesus wept, and then he gets pulled apart. Well, it's not in the book. It's not in the script. As a matter of fact, Andrew Robinson went to Clive on the side and said, "Hey, how about I say this instead?" Because I think it was like a curse or something. And he was like, "Sure, go for it." And they did it. And it was like, "Yep, cut. That's staying in the movie." So that is a movie that I'll actually have on rotation as well. And I'll watch it and part 2. And then sometimes part 3 with just, it's interesting, because the deeper you go into it, the more they get into the Lamont configuration and that whole world of the puzzle box. And they have the freaking puzzle box in space and, all these different things. But I actually just finished doing a whole thing about Hellraiser with somebody. But anyway, the movie I thought was, while not necessarily a very faithful adaptation. They took the core ideas and made it into a very, very enjoyable horror movie. And I've got to choose it, and it's got to stay on my list. And I don't really care what you say. I will fight you if you don't like this movie.
I know. I remember seeing this for the first time and just being blown away because it was different than a lot of what was going on in horror at the time. And, because this was, if I'm remembering right, the same time, you've got Jason running around and you've got Michael Myers. And so you have these horror movies that are really kind of centered around
slashers.
Yeah. Centered around a villain that's doing this kind of stuff. And this was something so different, but at the same time, just so incredibly effective and creepy and scary and, all the things that you're going to that kind of movie for. And I didn't interact with the short story until much later, but just the world that's created there and the way they did it, that's a fantastic pick. I think that's a wild
thank you. So while we're on that subject, have you read much of his stuff?
I haven't read a ton. I like you, I read 2 or 3 more after reading the short story, and it's been years and years and years, but I haven't read a ton of him.
Yeah, I have. And I mean, I was a voracious reader, at point. So much stuff that he introduced me to. And I was at an age where I was in 80s, I was 16, 17, 18, starting to read this stuff. And so it was kind of opening me up to a larger world out there. What was it called? Weave World. Amazing example of just bringing all these stories together and literally threading them all together. I just love his work. He did back in the early 90s, he did a gallery showing in New York. And I called the gallery and I was like, look, there's no way I can get there, but could I buy a print? Because he was there to autograph them.
Okay.
And so I bought 2 prints. And when it showed up, it was the 2 prints signed, and they sent me a what do you call them, like the little catalogs from the gallery, and he signed the front cover of that. And then he sent me like 2 or 3 different book stickers that he signed as well. And I was like, oh my God, this was so, it's just so amazing. Yeah. And those are some real treasures for me. But anyway, that's my love for Clive Barker, which I would be hard put to pick between him and Stephen King, because as much as I love Stephen King's work, he's not a amazing closer.
That's fair.
Yeah. But hell, the ride, the ride's worth it, so.
Right.
We've talked about The Cell, right? How when I give that book out to people. Yeah, I thought so. So anyway, all right. So we are now at the point where I get to use my $5 word and ask you, what is your penultimate choice?
So before I get to my penultimate choice, I'm going to do to you what you always do to me.
What?
And I'm going to ask you a question that you are not prepared for.
What? I don't do that
every single time.
Don't. Okay, yeah, I do. All right.
So here's my question for you, related to what we're talking about. What book that has not yet been adapted would you love to see an adaptation of?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to answer that with a slightly different question.
Okay.
I would like to see, what book would I like to see adapted correctly? It's going to be the first one. I'll give you the other one, but I'm stalling. Okay.
I'll give you this. I know what you're doing.
Okay. But the first one would be, I would like to see World War Z.
Yes, please.
As a series.
Yes, please.
And you actually get all of the stories that are going on.
I'm 100% in agreement.
Okay. I worship at the altar of Max Brooks. It blows me away that he is Mel Brooks' son. And the way that he writes and reads, okay, because that audiobook is on heavy rotation when I was doing it.
Crazy good.
The part where the female pilot gets shot down and she goes into the swamps and has to make her way. I swear Max Brooks must have driven down between Lafayette and Baton Rouge and went off I'm not kidding. The way he describes it and the way that you feel it's amazing. And I love driving from one place to the other with somebody who's never heard it, and I'll put it on, and it's just, so that's one answer, is I would like to see it done right. No offense to the guys. They made a great, fun zombie movie.
Just not World War Z.
It is not World War Z at all.
I will tell you, there's every possibility that Max Brooks did exactly what you described, because if you ever listen to him talk about his process, he's writing, the things he does are off the charts. So have you read his newest book, Devolution?
I haven't yet, but I've been told I should. So you may have even told me that.
I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
But one of the things they have to fashion weapons from whatever's around. And he actually went into his garage and started pulling stuff out and created all these weapons. And so he was interviewed on a podcast called the Writing Community Chat Show. Shout out to that one. And in his study where he's interviewing, the weapons that he built are behind him hanging on the wall.
No way.
It's that kind of dude.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay.
Have you stalled long enough?
I have. And this answer is also going to be probably not exactly. If you want to task me, you can tell me that this is not good enough. Okay. And I will come up with a third movie.
I'll never do it.
Okay. But there is a series of novels that were written by John Sanford. They're called the Prey novels.
Yep.
And they did a TV movie with Eric LaSalle from ER.
I remember this. Yeah.
Okay. And I have it on VHS somewhere. I recorded it because I was so excited to see it. And it so was not good. And no offense, because I'm just happy that it got to the screen, because Eric LaSalle loved it, and that he's pushed and he was behind. I think he was like, a producer on it, and, probably took next to nothing, to do it. But I would love to see that done in a way that was really true to the book.
Yeah. Because
I didn't feel like the detective was like he was portrayed in the book.
Well, and I think that one's really hard to do because those books are dark.
Yes, they are. And the first one is really good because you get his point of view. And then in the first book, Rules of Prey, which is an amazing book because it literally, every time he kills somebody, he leaves a rule, like don't use the same weapon twice, don't kill somebody, So halfway through the book, it switches and they call him the Mad Dog. You get the Mad Dog's point of view.
Yeah.
And so now you're like waiting for them to come together. And then they do come together. And I mean, it's an amazing, amazing book series. And it goes on for quite a while. And I've met him before. I drove like 7 hours once to go see him at a signing, and I and he signed every one of them. I had like a series of questions. He answered all of them. So it's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I've waited long enough. I've stalled long enough. I will tell you, it would probably have to be the book. I'm gonna put it here, called Kobayashi Maru, that we
talked about.
We have talked about. I thought that would be a cool movie.
Yeah.
And you could do it in a 2-hour movie, probably, where, you're seeing these little vignettes from when they were younger. It's hard to do. I don't know how you do it now, but this is a fantasy world. And so that's my fantasy choice. I would love to see Julie Ecklar's The Kobayashi Maru as a movie.
Nice. Final
answer. Lock it in.
I'll take it. That's good stuff.
All right. Well, what would yours be then?
Dude, I've got a list.
Well, should be easy to give me one then.
Not surprising at all. One of them that's actually being done is a series of novels by John Scalzi called Old Man's War.
Okay.
They're actually working on that one right now. So wish fulfillment is happening even as we speak. There's a standalone book, again, by John Scalzi, called The Kaiju Preservation Society. And it is awesome. It is. Scalzi is so fun. He's got a sense of humor about everything he does. But this Kaiju Preservation Society posits a world where an alternate dimension has been found that we can go back and forth between, that is essentially ruled by kaiju.
Okay. God bless you.
Thank you. Those kinds of monsters. And and so you have, and it's not like, oh, look, there's Godzilla, or look, there's Rodan. It's versions of that. But he's developed an entire biology, like how these things actually could live and run and what they would eat and how they would operate. And then you have humans kind of getting into this world, initially for research, but then ultimately, the bad guys come in and you have all this kind of stuff. But the book is a blast. And more than anything, I just want to see the monsters show up on the screen.
Yeah.
I grew up Sunday afternoons watching Godzilla take on everybody. And so I'm a sucker for kaiju. So I would love to see Kaiju Preservation Society. And I think I've heard somebody's optioned it. So again, maybe someday I will see what I want to see on the screen.
Oh, awesome. That's a good one.
So good. Check that one out.
Did you watch Ultraman when you were young? Yeah. Let's do Saturday morning, like 6 a.m. It was on. We were up there.
Yes.
Okay, well then
all of that to say, what is your penultimate choice? And you didn't put me on too hard of a spot. Okay, well, good. I didn't want you to cry or anything.
You've got one in your pocket, though. I know.
I might. So my second book adaptation is Children of Men by P.D. James. This is so Children of Men, very quickly, and we've talked about my love for all things dystopian and broken, which probably says something about me that I'm not comfortable with. But Children of Men is a world where people have stopped being able to have children. And so then the book gets into a lot of the religious and ethical and social implications of a world where you are the last generation. So the problem of, what does that do to hope? What does that do to creativity? What does that do to innovation? Because what's the point anymore, right?
Right.
And so the book goes down some of those roads. The film, which was directed by Alfonso Cuarón, it takes kind of one piece of that. So into this world where a child has not been born in 18 years. Wow. A woman shows up pregnant. Mm-hmm. And has to be.
I was out of town that weekend. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so it wasn't you. And is taken in by this guy who kind of finds himself tasked with protecting her and getting her to this ship that's out in the harbor, where they're trying to investigate and figure out what's going on, and they're doing research, but they also want to protect her. But at the same time, there are government kind of authorities that want to use her for their own devices, and there's a civil war that's broken out because everybody's just kind of sick of everything. And so the movie really focuses on this rescue and kind of protecting and getting her to the ship. The book's got a lot more to it than that. But what I love about this adaptation is, even though it doesn't take the full book into account, the way that Cuarón shoots this movie is off the charts good. He is famous for like these really long tracking shots. And there's a couple of moments in the movie. One is the whole scene takes place in and around a car that's been ambushed. And so you've got bullets flying, you've got people running down, you've got rocks and logs and all this kind of stuff. And it's about 4 minutes in a single shot.
Wow.
The cameras, and one of the extras on the DVD shows how they did it, and the way that like some of the seats would fly back at a second so the camera could go around that person to keep shooting. And it's just so cool the way that it's put together. But the end of the movie is a 6-minute tracking shot where he is helping her through a war zone. Okay. And you have every imaginable military thing going on. You've got tanks, and you've got stuff exploding, and you've got bullets flying. You've got animals that wander through. And it's one long shot, and it's haunting. It is but at the same time hopeful. You know, there's moments where people realize, because at this point she's had the baby, so they're going through this war zone with a child who starts crying, and it's been 8 years since anybody heard a baby cry. Right. And
wow, that's powerful.
All of this shows up, and it's beautiful, it's haunting, it's chilling, but at the same time, it's just so meaningful and hopeful, because in this world that all hope has been abandoned, because once we're done, that's it. Suddenly there's hope, and there's this life, and there's this opportunity. It's a fantastic book. I think this is another one where the film is different. But I would say if you had to choose, read the book or watch the movie, watch the movie.
Really?
Yeah. Just because of the way that it's shot and the way it's put together, it's just so good. But I obviously would recommend both. I think, and it's interesting because this is not the kind of book that P.D. James typically writes. But she wrote this one, and I'm just glad that she had this story, whatever it looked like.
Wow. It's a
good one.
That's a good one, man. I've seen, okay. I own the movie on HD DVD.
Okay.
That goes to show you. So I haven't watched it, though I do have an HD DVD player in the man cave. Dude, you know, I read such a problem. But anyway. I would like to watch it because it does look very cool. It kind of when I started reading Why the Last Man, the comic book series, it made me think of that movie, and kind of like the flop side of it. So let me ask you this: does the movie have a wrap up, or is it just the one kid and it kind of ends?
It ends with them going off to the ship, and we don't really know what happens after that.
Okay, cool. Well, I like that one. That's a great choice. Haven't seen it, but I guess I'll have to go outside and set up the HD.
You need to check that one out. All right. What's your number 2?
Well, my number 2 is a book that we've actually talked about. So I don't think you'll be very surprised that my number 2 is Odd Thomas.
Saw it coming.
Yeah, I figured, because it is a wonderful adaptation of it. I thought that Anton Yelchin, again, you know, you're watching this movie knowing that this guy died like not long after. I mean, I don't think he made another movie. I could be wrong, but so you're watching what is his last performance, basically, and he is so vulnerable in this role, just like Odd Thomas. Now, he doesn't look like my mind wrapped around him. Okay. And that's fine. You know, it doesn't, you can't necessarily do that, but all of the people in this movie, with the exception of they left out the rather rotund, a rich friend of his, which I did think every time I read him, I was thinking of the friend from Pee-wee's Big Adventure that hated. I always just kind of got that look to him.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was so amazing, and I kept waiting to be disappointed because there are so many things. The room, the black room, I had no idea how you could do that in a movie. You know, it just didn't make any sense to me, and they did not finger of God that movie. That scene was different,
right? But
it was still fantastically done. And I loved Willem Dafoe as the police chief. Again, not at all what I was kind of thinking of. What was his name? Bo from the dad from Gremlins. That's what I had in my mind, you know, but little Addison Timlin as Brownie, she was amazing, you know. So I find it's such a good movie, and I don't see that a lot of horror people talk about it. And I don't know why, because I think the book is fantastic, I think the movie is fantastic, which just goes to show you how my number 1 is going to be a tough one.
You're
because
huge.
You know how much I love Thomas. So anyway, that's going to be my number 2 choice.
No, that's interesting because the point you're making about horror fans, I don't know that people think of Odd Thomas as horror.
You talk to the dead, you've got these spirits that come through, and I mean, you've got a lot of horror elements in it.
I think there's so much. No, I agree with you, but I think there's that the definition of what that is now. I almost think there's a dichotomy that's been created between ghost stories and horror. At least ghost stories that aren't, The Conjuring or whatever, that kind of stuff where it's got that also the kind of gory side to it.
Which is missing.
Yeah. I just wonder if when people think of, they might think of Dean Koontz when they think of horror, but not in the same way they would think about a Stephen King or Clive Barker or some of these others, Paul Tremblay, because just the things that they write about are more how we define horror now, as opposed to ghost stories like Odd Thomas.
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe I should be calling this a ghost story. A ghost story with an action ending type thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we're splitting hairs at that point, but I think that might be why when people think about horror movies, horror films, horror books, that it doesn't come up on the conversation.
You're pretty good at that. You should consider, doing more with books. I'm just throwing it out there.
Ebookcast.com.
Yeah, there you go.
Plug given.
Plug. All right. So we're now to our number one choices. Do you want to try to stump me again? I'm leaving it open.
I don't know that I'll stump you with this because you probably have a quick answer, but I would be interested to hear what it is.
Okay.
What's an adaptation that you hate?
Where do I begin?
Right. See, I knew there'd be an answer.
Probably one of the worst adaptations in my mind has everything to do with technology at the time. It's got to be Lawnmower Man.
Interesting.
From Stephen King. Oh, by the way, From a Buick 8 would make a great movie too.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that's interesting. They should not have made that movie at that time. They should have done a George Lucas and gone, you know what? The technology's not here yet. I'm going to go ahead and shelf this and let's do something else. It's just bad. And I love me some Jeff Fahey. Let me tell you, Body Bags is one of my favorite movies that's out there. Okay. I don't know if you've ever seen that one. It's bad.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, it's bad, but I love it. But anyway, they should have said, let's not do this right now and move out, because it's just so hard. Even at the time when it was like, ooh, wow, up on the screen, it was bad. Cheap. Yeah. And then to follow it up with Lawnmower Man 2. I don't know if you ever have heard the story, but my wife got a free pass for every horror movie ever after she sat through that film. And rightly so, she deserved it, because that was a tough movie. That was a very tough movie. What about you?
Again, where do I even begin? When I thought of this question, I thought of two, and one maybe not completely fair. One of the only movies I've ever left angry was the original Suicide Squad movie.
Oh, okay.
Which won't even get it, but the one that I think is the top, maybe the worst, not just the worst adaptation ever made, possibly one of the worst films ever made.
10 Commandments. Yep.
Stop it. Is let's make very clear, we can tell whose voice is who's on this. Is Battlefield Earth.
Oh God.
Hubbard book that John Travolta,
Yeah.
So I read that book in high school and had no idea who L. Ron Hubbard was. And I'm like, this is kind of cool because it's, again, rising up and the end of the world, the aliens are here and this kind of stuff. And it's a doorstop. I mean, it's another, 1,200 page book.
Yeah.
Then the movie happens, and I'm telling you, that's about as bad as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
That makes Lawnmower Man look like the 10 Commandments. It was so bad. The CGI is awful. The performances are awful. Just nothing works in that movie. And I just remember being not so much angry at that one, as just sad.
Yeah, Travolta's hair was amazing in that movie, though.
Just disappointed. Like it was that kind of thing. So yeah, Battlefield Earth.
It was like your kid who took $20. Yeah.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Just disappointed.
So there you go.
Wow. See, that's a tough question for me because, I don't like to talk about things that I don't like.
Right. That's why
I try to stay away. Yeah, exactly. So that is a tough one. I'm sure I know there's got to be more, but not to argue your point, but I find myself not getting so mad at comic book adaptions anymore, especially something like Suicide Squad, just because there have been so many different iterations of it. Sure. And it's like, what's the story this time? Okay, well, they pulled this from there and they pulled this from there and they pulled this from out their butt. And here's the movie. Okay. So I'm just like, whatever. Let's watch it. Oh, look, I think another Joker.
The reason I was angry about it was not storyline, because I don't know that sequence.
Oh, okay.
I was angry about it because it just was a really bad movie and it promised to be something else. And so, I'm into the team up kind of things, and I love the concept of the bad guys are going to kind of be good, but they're still going to be who they like. There's all of that I'm in. Mm-hmm. And almost from the very opening of that movie, I was like, this is awful.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, again, I mean, all this is subjective. We talk about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember sitting there thinking, I have been like so let down by these people and not delivered. And if you know the backstory of that movie and all the mess and how it got made, basically it was recut by the people that did the trailer that everybody loved. But then what we found out was that those people were really good at cutting trailers and not making movies. But they redeemed themselves because the Suicide Squad is great.
Oh yeah, I mean, who knew that adding those 3 letters would just make a much better movie?
That's all you need.
It's all you need. So most of the time I just get 2 letters. But anyway, I think now we can get to your favorite book, comic book, coloring book, color by number, choose your own adventure book adaptation. Lay it on me.
I love this book. And when the movie happened, it's one of those, I was like, please don't screw this up. Please don't screw this up. And I love the movie every bit as much as I love the book. The book is by an actual rocket scientist. NASA rocket scientist wrote a book about what would happen if a man got stranded on Mars and had to survive for a while. It's The Martian by Andy Weir.
That's a great one.
I'm telling, I love, and it's like my nerdy heart is growing 3 sizes even just talking about this. I'm a big science guy. I love hard science fiction. This is that because it's written by an actual rocket scientist. And so the short kickoff, astronaut named Mark Watley is with a group that is on Mars doing some research. They have to leave in the middle of a storm. Something happens and they think that Watley has been killed. And so they leave without him. And then he wakes up on Mars by himself.
Now, does his transporter clone go on the other ship?
Not how that works.
Okay.
Different multiverse.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's so confusing. But he wakes up on Mars and realizes very quickly, I'm here by myself. And not only is there the problem of, how do I survive? But like, no one can come get me. It's not like you can call Uber and they're going to be there, right? Mars is a long way from Earth. And so the whole book is really just about him solving problems to stay alive. And you would think, and this is why I'm like, don't screw this up. That might be hard to do in film. But Ridley Scott directed it. Matt Damon is Mark Watley. Other like Jeff Daniels is in it. Kristen Wiig's in it. Donald Glover's in it. But the way that they show his problem solving process, the way that they show just kind of his internal dialogue, because a lot of a book like that, I mean, it's like Castaway, right? It's one guy by himself doing the thing, and they have him do these journals that he's just recording. But every step of the process of how he is surviving, and then manages to communicate back with Earth and, hey, I'm still here, which then sets up a whole separate set of problem solving as to how do we go get this guy?
Right.
What's the plan? How are we going to make this happen? And it could so easily turn into this boring thing of, oh, look, he's walking around on red sand again. And it just doesn't. The book does a great job of getting into, this is how you could solve this problem, but this is what might happen if you solve it this way. Okay. And so you run into consequences and you run into the bad things that can happen sometimes. But ultimately, it's a hero's journey to survive and then get to the place where he can be rescued. And spoiler alert, the rescue sequence where he actually does get is just off the charts fun. And it very faithful to the way that it's written.
Oh, cool.
But the way that it's done is just super cool. But again, it's a book about solving problems. And in fact, at the end, Watley in the movie, he goes back and he's teaching future astronauts. And he says, if I can read this real quick, because I think this sums it up. He says, when you're confronted with whatever, you do the math, you solve one problem, then you solve the next and the next and the next. And if you solve enough of them, you get to come home. And that's basically the book, but it's also just a great lesson for life, right? Of how to survive and move forward.
That's how I get through work.
That's how all of us get through every day, right? But yeah, The Martian, and this is one you have to do both. And I would say read the book first, because it just really does give you a massive appreciation for the intricacies and the technicalities of what then you're going to see him do in the film.
Cool. Man, love that.
Love it. Love that.
Yeah. Well, I have to toot my own horn, even though I had absolutely nothing to do with it. My uncle's partner is also a rocket scientist.
Oh, yeah.
He had a, I don't know, science experiment or whatever on the very last shuttle. And he and my uncle got to go to the landing and literally take his stuff off the space shuttle. How cool is that?
Good stuff.
Oh, man. So I tell everybody, yeah, he's a rocket scientist.
That's awesome.
And I'm a rocket surgeon. And so,
nerdy guy is talking science.
Okay. My number one is the sequel to a book that I talked about in our last episode.
Okay.
And I'm going to see if I could recreate it. And if not, I'm going to take the sound and write it over here and it will sound like I'm doing it. So see if you can guess what the book is.
I have no idea what just happened.
That was a nice Chianti with my fava beans.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely have to find that on YouTube. Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris.
So good.
As much as I love Red Dragon and the world that he creates in there, I love what they did with Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling is freaking amazing. Yeah. So many of the scenes that they bring to life are just right on. Okay. I mean, the scene where she's, where they pull the floater out and she's in Georgia and she's in the room with all the big guys. And I mean, it's like the book comes to life in front of you. Uh-huh. I didn't have a real picture of Clarice when I read the book, but if I did, Jodie Foster would have done a perfect job of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I love the fact that there are so many different things in the movie. I love the fact that Chris Isaac is a SWAT commander, that George Romero is a janitor, Roger Corman is the FBI director. It's, all of these little people that I loved this book so much that they wanted to have a small part inside it.
Yeah.
And this is another movie. I mean, I've got this movie on DVD, on Laserdisc, on VHS. I can watch it so many different ways. I have a first edition of the book that I got when it, right back when it came out. I think I was working in a bookstore at that time. If not, I do. But stupid me went through a period where I thought it would be cool to have all of the books without their covers, on the shelf. I know, don't make that face at me. And so somewhere along the lines, the book cover got messed up. So I haven't, I know I could go and buy a third edition or whatever and put that going, but it's knowing that I don't have it. Yeah, so Vampire Lestat's the same way, so I think it was a hurricane that we got a bunch of water in and it got to them. But anyway, Silence of the Lambs, by Thomas Harris. Just it's a fantastic film. Definitely not a film for the whole family.
Right.
I love Ted Levine as Buffalo Bill, his roommate, friend Catherine Martin. I just love it. I just love so much about it.
Yeah, and it's one that you talk about. We were talking about Odd Thomas and not necessarily being considered horror. I think sometimes what gets forgotten about movies like this when it's not for everybody, right? And you've got to kind of be aware that this is it's got some things that are kind of hard to watch, but it can still be an outstanding film, right? The movie itself. I think Seven is the same way, right? It's not for everybody, but man, if you just watch this as a movie, even if you are squeamish about some of the things that go on, if you just watch it as a film, you can't help but appreciate it.
Yeah.
You don't like it, but you've got to recognize it for what it is.
And you sit back and you look at all of the people and the performances that they gave in this movie, and you look at the director Jonathan Demme, and this is the same guy who did Piranha and Gremlins. So it's just amazing. You start off with that incredible source material, and you fill it with all of these incredibly talented actors. It's and of course it happens a lot, but you almost couldn't fail. And they so did not. That scene when Hannibal gets out of the cage and he's got Charles Napier handcuffed, and he has the music going, and he's using the baton as a baton, but also as a baton. So many different scenes jump to your mind from that movie. It had to be my number one.
That's awesome. That's a good one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Your opinion means a lot to me.
You said that with a great deal of sincerity. Well done.
Thank you. I have been practicing since we talked last. No, it does. You know your books. That's, there's absolutely no doubt of that. I wish I read as much as you did. I would like to ask you a question.
Okay.
Have you ever read The White Plague by James Herbert?
Yes. Gosh, it's been a long time
since it came out back in the 80s.
Yeah.
If I could change my answer or add to my answer, that would also make a good season of a show.
Yeah.
The way, and I don't think that's not, and it's your post-apocalyptic type thing too. That's a great story. Oh, I would also like to say Lucifer's Hammer.
Thank you.
Jerry Purnell and Larry Niven.
Yes.
Did you know there was a comic book that came out for that? For it gave 2 issues. I have them both, and they're both signed now by Larry.
That's very cool.
So yes, you may worship.
I probably won't, but man, I love that book.
I love that book so much. I wanted to buy copies of the Firefox books and wrap them in wax and just hide them somewhere at some point, just to do it, because it's such a great book. Oh yeah! Wow, dude, man, so much fun.
We've talked about a lot of books tonight.
A lot of books. It's almost like we could do this once a month, if we didn't have other things going on.
Other things to do.
Yeah. I'm really starting to strong arm you to get you to do a show. I don't know what it is.
I told you it's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. All right. Just wait for Christmas.
Yeah, just hang on.
Yeah. Well, this would normally be the part of the show where I ask you what we want to do next.
Right.
And I don't think we have anything planned yet, do we?
No. About the 2 that we've done.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh gosh.
You have 1 week.
Okay.
To come up with a non-book related Fave 5 list that you want to do.
I can do this.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you a question. Do you like old radio shows?
I don't do a lot of old radio shows, but I don't know that I don't like them. I've just never
done them. Yeah. Okay. Just wondering. I'm listening to an amazing new podcast series called The Mysterious Old Radio Listener Society.
My son-in-law has told me about this.
Yes, they are amazing. Not only do they play the episode and then they talk, like the episodes are like 25, 30 minutes. Then they talk about 25, 30 minutes, which is just the right time that I'm sitting here saying now that we've hit the 2-hour mark. Just the right time for a podcast is an hour. But they also do live readings and recreations of them and all of this stuff. So I'm trying to reach out to them, that hopefully with this shout out, since I'm sure they're huge listeners of the show. Maybe I can get them on. Yeah.
If they're still awake. We've been at this for a little while.
We have been. So you think of something and you get back with me within a week.
Got it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, I would like to thank all of you out there in the podcast universe for joining us for this long episode of Fave Five From Fans. You can find us and more just like it from the Plastic Microphone Studios, wherever you catch a podcast. It would be a massive help if you could send me, I don't know, $50 every month. I can give you the Fave Five, podcast, whatever thing to do that with the computer and the interwebs. If you like the show, you could consider telling a friend about us. And if you don't like the show, consider that guy who sits across from you on the bus and he gives you that eye when you're not looking at him. And then when he's not looking, he's looking at you. He's such a creep. Let him know about the episode. Maybe he'll hate it. And if he likes it, it's another listener. And don't forget to look for our new show coming out that no one asked me to do. Like, I don't have enough on the airway. And listen for our sporadic copies of The Complete Disarray with Jamie Ray, where we take one topic and just go on and on and on and on about it. Just another product of the Plastic Microphone Studios, because no one demanded it. And remember, folks, it may not be the best, it may not be the most popular, but if it's your favorite, then it's good enough for us. Thanks so much for joining us. Josimity, take us out.
I have no idea how you end things. So, hey, thanks for listening. Check out the okiebookcast.com. We'll see you soon.
And buy your book.
And buy my book. Yeah, jhallwriter.com.